The Uber case for Chapter 4 deals with many issues associated with globalism. The case asks you to consider the cultural differences, business structure, and government policies. This guidance will deal with cultural differences. These differences must be taken into account when dealing with a global marketplace. The text discusses two models for defining the cultural differences, the Hofstede model and the Globe Project. I am going to use the Hofstede 6D model as the example. It is slightly different than the text, but I think it will give you a good understanding of what cultural dimension models, Hofstede's and the Globe Project, are trying to explain. I recommend you look up the website www.hofstede-insights.com. This is where I found the descriptions of the 6 dimensions below. Please review the 6 dimensions and compare countries. For instance, if you were planning a trip to Russia, you can enter the United States and Russia in the model, and it will display similarities and differences in the cultures. I will discuss the cultural differences according to the model and for the 2 countries as an example. The 6 dimensions are power distance, individual versus collectivism, masculinity versus femininity, uncertainty avoidance, long-term versus short-term orientation, and indulgent versus restraint. Power distance considers the degree to which the less powerful members of a society accept that power is distributed unequally. Societies with a high power difference accept the inequalities and do not try to change. A society with low power distance will have people strive to equalize the distribution of power and demand justification for those inequalities of power. The United States rates at 40, Russia at 93. This means Russia accepts the power differences and is okay with the inequity, whereas the United States does not. Individualism can be defined as a preference for a loosely knit social framework in which individuals are expected to take care of only themselves and their immediate families. Collectivism represents a preference for a tightly knit framework in society in which individuals can expect their relatives or members of a particular group to look at them in exchange for unquestioning loyalty. This isn't everyone standing around holding hands and singing Kumbaya or laying around all days while others provide. This is a hierarchy that demands obedience from the followers. The United States is at 91 and Russia at 39. This means that the United States society tends to be concerned with themselves and their immediate family, whereas Russia expects those in charge to have obedience from those they are responsible. Masculinity represents a preference in society for achievement, heroism, assertiveness, and material rewards for success. Society at large is more competitive. Femininity stands for a preference for cooperation, modesty, caring for the weak, and quality of life. Think of it as masculinity being successful regardless of what you may like to do, and femininity is only doing what you like and being satisfied. United States is at 62, Russia's at 36. The United States tends to be very success-driven, whereas Russia tends to be more satisfied with being less competitive and satisfied with their stock in life. Uncertainty avoidance expresses the degree the members of a society feel uncomfortable with uncertainty and ambiguity. The fundamental issue here is how society deals with the fact that the future can never be known. Should we try to control it, or should we just let it happen? Countries exhibiting strong uncertainty avoidance maintain rigid codes of belief and behavior. They are intolerant of unorthodox behavior and ideas. Weak uncertainty avoidance societies maintain a more relaxed attitude in which practice counts more than principles. The United States is at 46, Russia at 95. The United States tends to be less risk-averse and is willing to try new things, whereas Russia tends to be very rigid in beliefs and behavior and tends not to try new ideas. Long-term versus short-term orientation, or LTO. Every society has to maintain some links with its own past while dealing with the challenges of the present and the future. Societies prioritize these two essential goals differently. Societies who score low on this dimension, for example, prefer to maintain time-honored traditions and norms while viewing societal change with suspicion. Those with a culture which scores high, on the other hand, take a more pragmatic approach. They tend to encourage thrift and efforts at modern education to prepare for the future. The United States is at 26, Russia at 81. The United States tends to be more thrifty, believe in education, and preparing for the future, whereas Russia tends to be more rigid and unaccepting of change. Indulgence stands for a society that allows relatively free gratification of basic natural human drives and relating to enjoying life and having fun. Restraint stands for a society that suppresses gratification of needs and regulates it by means of strict social norms. The United States is at 68, Russia at 20. The United States tends to enjoy themselves, whereas Russia discourages such enjoyment. The contrast is fairly wide. You can see that the cultural differences between the United States and Russia are almost exact opposites. Maybe you have wondered why these two countries don't get along. I think Hofstede's 6D model may help explain this. In general, most cultures have some similarities and some dissimilarities. It's a good idea to review the Hofstede 6D model when traveling or dealing with cultural differences.